Jalen Carter sat at his desk near the window, tapping his pencil against the notebook in front of him. It wasn't nervousness, just a habit. His mother always told him it wasn't something he should do, but it helped him think. The classroom buzzed with the usual chatter of his classmates, but Jalen focused intently on the worksheet in front of him. He liked finishing things early. Ms. Montgomery, his teacher, stood at the front, flipping through her notes. She had been teaching for over a decade and had a reputation for being tough but fair, at least to those she liked. Jalen had never been one of those students. She didn't insult him outright, but it was clear that he wasn't on her radar. He was often ignored when he raised his hand, and when he answered a question right, she quickly moved on. But when he got something wrong, she lingered just a little longer, her eyes almost enjoying his discomfort. "Why does she never call on you?" Xavier, the boy sitting next to Jalen, whispered one afternoon, barely concealing his amusement. "You're like invisible or something." Jalen only shrugged. "Guess so." But today felt different. For the first time, Ms. Montgomery glanced in his direction more than usual, not in a threatening way, but with a strange kind of anticipation. The lesson began, a typical history class on the civil rights movement. Jalen took notes, listening carefully, waiting for the usual pattern to play out. And then, something unexpected happened. "Jalen," Ms. Montgomery said, her voice sharp, "why don't you answer this one?" Heads turned. Jalen blinked, his hand instinctively raised, but he hadn't expected her to call on him. He sat up straighter, his mind quickly scanning the board. The question was about the impact of Rosa Parks on the civil rights movement. He cleared his throat, his voice steady as he replied, "Rosa Parks' arrest sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, which became a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement. It showed the power of nonviolent protest and unity." Ms. Montgomery mused. "Not bad." She quickly moved on, but for a brief moment, she didn't look disappointed. There was something else in her eyes. Something Jalen couldn't quite place. The rest of the lesson went by in a blur, but Jalen's mind kept returning to that moment. Ms. Montgomery wasn't ignoring him anymore. She was watching him closely. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Ms. Montgomery called out to Jalen before he could leave. "Jalen, stay behind for a moment." Some of his classmates glanced over, but no one said anything. Jalen took his time, gathering his things slowly, trying to figure out what this could mean. When he finally approached her desk, she was looking at him with a strange expression on her face. "I overheard you talking the other day," she said, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp. "About your grandfather. You said he was a musician." Jalen frowned. "Yeah, he was a pianist. Played jazz." Ms. Montgomery's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Interesting. You must have picked up a few things from him." Jalen hesitated. He didn't know where this was going, but something about the way she was looking at him made him uneasy. "A little," he admitted. Ms. Montgomery leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping against the desk, a smug look creeping onto her face. "Good to know. Tomorrow, let's see what you've got." Jalen stared at her. "What?" "The piano," she said, gesturing toward the old and used upright piano in the corner of the room. "You'll play something for the class." The words hit him like a punch in the gut. He could feel the eyes of the few remaining students on him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and mockery.
"Why?"
Jalen wanted to ask, but he didn't. He could already tell this wasn't a request. It was a challenge, and she expected him to fail. The night before his performance, Jalen barely slept. His mind raced with the possibilities. He knew exactly what Ms. Montgomery was trying to do. She was setting him up to fail. She wanted him to make a mistake, to embarrass himself in front of the class. It was a trap, and he knew it. The next morning, whispers filled the air as Jalen entered the classroom. "You ready to play today?" Xavier asked with a teasing smile, his voice carrying across the room. "I didn't know you could play," Rachel said, her tone more curious than mocking. Jalen didn't respond. He just took his seat, silently bracing himself for what was to come. The room felt different today, thicker with tension, charged with anticipation. When Ms. Montgomery entered, she didn't waste any time. "All right, class," she said, her voice too bright. "Let's see what Jalen can do with the piano." The room fell quiet as everyone turned their attention to him. He could feel their eyes, some curious, others filled with judgment, but Jalen refused to let it shake him. He stood slowly, walked to the corner where the old piano stood, and sat down. He didn't look at anyone. The laughter and whispers behind him were like a distant echo now. It didn't matter. The piano was out of tune, its keys chipped and yellowed, but to Jalen, it didn't matter. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there to prove something to himself. He placed his fingers gently on the keys. For a moment, he closed his eyes, focusing on the music. It started with a slow, bluesy progression his grandfather had taught him. Each note felt natural, like it was coming from deep within him. The room was silent, every student holding their breath. As his fingers moved faster, the melody grew more complex, the rhythm flowing effortlessly. Jalen wasn't just playing music, he was telling a story, expressing emotions that words couldn't capture. The room, once filled with tension, now felt still and quiet. No one moved. By the time he reached the final note, Jalen was lost in the music, his hands gliding over the keys like they belonged there. The last chord rang out, and the room remained silent for a moment. Then slowly applause started. Xavier was the first to clap, followed by Rachel, and soon the entire class joined in. But Ms. Montgomery didn't say a word. Her arms were crossed, her face unreadable. She didn't move as the applause continued. Jalen sat there, steady and calm, not seeking validation from anyone. He had already proven what he needed to. Finally, Ms. Montgomery cleared her throat. "Well," she said with a hint of surprise, "that was unexpected." Jalen met her gaze, unshaken. "My grandfather taught me," he said simply. As the students gathered their things and left, a few gave him quiet nods of acknowledgement. No one spoke to Ms. Montgomery. Her authority had cracked just a little. She had underestimated him, and now she couldn't take it back. Jalen walked out of the classroom, his head held high. The weight of the moment settled over him. He hadn't just proven himself to Ms. Montgomery, he had proven to everyone, and most importantly, to himself, that he wouldn't be ignored anymore.